Oh boy. Let's see how this works. Alright, testing things out here. Ah, boy. I have no idea how this is going to work. So, let's find out. Ugh. So gloopy. Get all of my fingers. Oop, making a mess apparently. Didn't expect it to make that. It's cold. It's cold in them Dar Hills. What? Alright, I don't know if I need to add more acetone or what. I'm really not supposed to let this stuff sit, but oh, play by the rules. Right, that's not true, but try to splash in just a wee bit more. Okay, that was a little more than a wee bit. Whatever. It's okay. It's okay, it's okay. That's what I say. Ugh. Yeah, making them. Look at that. A geyser happened. Out of all the times I mix this, it does it only when I'm testing a stream. That's okay. Don't do as I do. That'll clean up once it dries. Should be wearing gloves, but I misplaced mine, and I don't want to go find them. So, let's see what I can do here. This is Bondo Spot Putty and acetone. The idea is it'll help smooth out layer lines. The thicker you make it, the more it'll fill in one go, but the more you risk detail. I'm using some old brush, that doesn't matter. I wouldn't use a good brush on this. It also has a nice benefit of what's what I'm looking for. Making it easier to tell when to actually start painting if you've got coverage of your primer. Like this is gray filament, and I have like off-white filament. So unless you're using like a blatantly obvious filament color that's different from the paint, it can be a little difficult to tell sometimes, especially in an airbrush situation. It can be difficult to tell what it is you got painted versus not when it's wet. This, unless you're going to base coat in a color that's very similar to this weird brickish color that Bondo Spot Putty is, you're going to have a pretty easy time telling if you painted something or not. You can put it over itself too. It doesn't like reactivate or whatever, which is good on some of these areas where I've already sanded it down a little bit because you want to do a gentle like sanding film on it. Of course, I'm not on camera, but you want to do a gentle sanding film on it to kind of help it feel extra smooth when you're done, because it can get a little like gritty feeling because it's gonna dry, and the Bondo Spot Putty leaves like a little, I don't know how to best describe it other than like a grit feel. So a little light sand just smooths everything out, but it also discolors it. It makes it like, well, sanded. So instead of being just like orangey color, it looks a little, I suppose whatever your filament color is shows through a little bit, so you can tell where you've reapplied your stuff versus haven't. And once it's fully dry, you can just put successive layers on. And if it gets a little bit too cruddy in like some of the things like I'm looking at here, you can go back in with a panel line scraper and clean up some lines, make it look sharper. But ultimately, it's a completely optional step. If you're okay with how the layering is looking, or if you feel like your paint's going to help self-level it a little bit, you can do that. On the other hand, for me, I prefer to be as smooth as possible starting, because what's what I'm looking for? I don't want to have it show up when I'm trying to do like shading or whatnot. Why isn't this working? Let's see here. Is that down to it? I don't know. So instead of risking potential weird happenings with shades or washes or anything like that, I try to get it smooth, and then I'm going to use Mist Surfacer to primer it, and that should really help things out, because it's not like it's disastrous in terms of layer lines or anything. It's pretty standard fare. Just trying to make it look as nice as possible, because it's 1/60th scale or 28 millimeters, so you want it to look pretty good. Excuse my ineptitude. I'm trying to figure this out, check things out, and get accustomed to doing stuff so it can be seen. Because I like to do like stuff and get my points across while doing it. You know what I mean? Sometimes doing a video after the fact, it's nice, but it's like a summary. This is the right arm of the mech. Oh hey, I think it worked. There you can kind of see the layer lines-ish, if it'll focus. So that's where it's picking up where it's obviously uneven, and that's why it didn't apply smooth there. So you're just putting, basically what you're doing with the Bondo spot putty and the acetone is and it has to be acetone, it can't be non-acetone. Isopropyl, it can't be isopropyl. You gotta use pure acetone or else it won't work, but you're basically just turning the spot putty into like a paint almost. I don't want to say you're melting it down, that's not the right word. In any case, since you're doing what you would do with it straight up, only it's significantly thinner and finer, and you're just putting enough on so you don't see those lines, and then you're sanding it down gently so it doesn't feel exceptionally uneven or anything like that. It doesn't feel gritty. We're not looking to make the paint super smooth, we're not looking to make this super smooth because it's not the paint. We're looking to get it in there, smooth it down, preserve detail, and then file it so it's all smooth. Not file it, sand it so it's all smooth. Yeah. Yep. So that's the idea, and I jump around parts so I can let it dry before really tackling more of it. We could even just take some of this somewhat thicker stuff and just put it right on with this popsicle stick, and then use the brush to kind of feather it in, smooth it down a little bit. This is the messy stage. This is the messy stage that doesn't really do much for inspiring confidence in what you're doing when you're doing it. So bear that in mind. If you're watching this after the fact, since there's nobody here yet, that's cool. Sound off in the comments. Help fight the algorithm a little bit, and give me your guess on what this is. This mech here. This is a 28mm or 1/60th scale printing of a Clan Omni mech, and that's all the pieces you see that aren't little dudes like this guy. Or clearly, all the big pieces are the same mech, leg and arms and stuff like that. So I have the torso, but I'm keeping it off camera while I work on it a little bit, because I think that'll be too big of a giveaway this soon. I think once paint actually starts hitting, like once we get a nice primer coat down, and then he's ready to start taking the paint, I think I'll then showcase that stuff to make it a bit more obvious what's being worked on. But yeah, Clan Omni Mech. first of 5. Each one's going to be different. Unnecessarily big brush for an unnecessarily big model. Not that it's big like bristle-wise, it's just long. So, you know, there's that. That's it. Is it working? Oh yeah. It's just, I'm not caught up to it. How crazy. Good kind of rule of thumb here is once it's dry, you feel it. If it feels pretty smooth without being sanded down a little, you're pretty much, I think, there for the most part. And it's gonna, opinions vary, right? What you feel super smooth to you might not be where I would want it, or vice versa. Once it feels pretty good, unsanded, lightly sanding it to increase that smoothness, it's gonna make it spot on for what you're looking for, whatever that might be. And then you're good. And then you can set that piece aside for paint once you get there. Completely optional, like I said. I did a test 1/60 scale model of a classic Timberwolf, and I did this on some of the pieces, not all of it, and it still looked great. Painted that one up in kind of a hurry, not because I wanted to hurry it, but because I wasn't trying, or I didn't have, not that I wasn't trying, I wasn't trying to make use of different paints, and I didn't have the idea to go ahead and try and gunpla it a little bit in terms of paints and technique and whatever. So, this being the smallest of the mechs, I guess that's another hint for this star coming up. I thought I'd start with it to A, dial in the paint scheme, and B, get a sense of how everything's going to feel. So currently, the idea is to do Alpha Galaxy Smoke Jaguar. Smoke Jaguar is my clan of choice, always has been, since the 90s. And Alpha Galaxy, I feel, is like their kind of premiere in terms of a poster child for the clan. It's not always going to be Alpha Galaxy, right? Like Clan Wolf's Alpha Galaxy is green. You don't really see that often. In any case, I feel like every clan has, and even every great house has like a signature look from one of their forces that is kind of just naturally associated with them, even though they have other looks. And I feel for Smoke Jaguar, it's Alpha Galaxy. I was going to do my personal signature look, is what I did for the, that's what I used in MechWarrior Online when I used to play it. And it's what I use in MechWarrior 5 Clans for Smoke Jaguar. I call it the Invasion Smoke Jaguar. Using the Invasion camo pattern, and I just change it to be black, red, and gray. But I was going to do that, but I wanted it to be more obvious what you're looking at. So if somebody were to look at this and not know what the heck I do for just personal camo pattern stuff in video games, they'd be able to tell it's Clan Smoke Jaguar, because I don't have decals. And I'm not going to freehand that simple, because me and freehanding don't get along, and I want this to look good. So, So if you know at least what you're looking at in terms of the Alpha Galaxy S Smoke Jaguar, you should be able to tell what these guys are by looking at it. But there's a catch. And that is, I want this to be representative of the Ill Clan era of Clan Smoke Jaguar. They're back, right, in the 3150s. So, I don't really know what visuals they have. I don't know if they're... I know they're used to being small, so they have a penalty if they assemble too big in like the miniature game side of stuff. But I don't know how big they can assemble. Like, do they have more than one galaxy yet? So I don't know what their look is. Either their signature look or their only look. I was told in a comment a bit ago that it's Alpha Galaxy is what they're using for the Ill Clan era, which would make sense because they're using the same symbol. And well, signature look, right? There's no mistaking it once you know what to look for. But I haven't been able to verify that at all, and I don't doubt the other person. It's just I would like to put eyes on it. So I'm going with that tentatively, and it's only tentatively because I haven't been able to confirm personally. Because I don't know where to look. I don't have much stuff published in the Ill Clan era, so I don't know where it could be. If you know, let me know, because I want to be able to for sure verify that. That would be ideal. Worst case scenario, if I paint these guys up as Alpha Galaxy and then like months down the line something comes out from the company that basically confirms they never used Alpha Galaxy in the Ill Clan era, I can just make it up as a Keshik, right? Some type of special. Here are the two unknown Keshik in the Ill Clan era. And it'll work out just fine. But I would just like to have it be representative of the most modern era of Battletech, even though these mechs are not from that era. These are definitely older mechs. Another hint, I guess. Gotta work on my in-frame shots. So I'm trying to heavily mud up the leg. I start with the legs on the mechs because once I get them how I want, I can dry fit things together, get them stanced. You can see this leg is kind of loosey-goosey. I can then, since I'm going to want it to stand firmly, I'll probably end up locking it in place with some glue, you know, discreetly. So once I have the legs more or less where I want them and the posing how I want, I can do that. Plus I feel like it makes sense on the assembly line, if this was the thing, to give it legs to stand on before you work on the rest of it. Or put things together more promptly. I'm more of a sub-assembly builder and painter anyway when it comes to miniatures and models and whatever. I don't want to put everything fully together if I can help it. Now if it comes fully together, then you know you can't help it, and that's fine. I'm good with that. And depending upon what pieces you get, I might put them fully together. It all depends on what potentially blocks what or anything like that. So in those situations, I would rather, if things potentially are blocked or become annoying, I would much rather sub-assembly it. But that's just me. Obviously, it all depends on what you're working on. This is kind of like painting, only somewhat slower in terms of basic painting, not doing any fancy stuff because you want it to fully dry, you want to get good, not too thick, but thick enough, full enough coverage. You gotta remix up the concoction and so on. So you get the same effect though. At least you can tell where you've been. Now I'm not looking to get super crazy where I'm going to have absolutely perfect zero seams, especially if I feel like it's a place you're not normally going to see. Plus, we're talking about an OmniMech, so I feel like maybe like certain weapon areas, the seam is just where the Omni set connects, right? That's my justification for it not being perfect. But I'm going to basically get it to where the stuff you're expected to be paying attention to and seeing are going to be as good as I can get it. I don't make these files. I don't know how to do that. Sometimes I wish I did because I would like, there are certain chassis I would like to have to further flesh out maybe you know, the star with extra options just about mechs, but I don't know how to do that, and it's probably better that way. But I just do my due diligence. If you search on the internet, you'll find stuff. I'm not going to be responsible for something potentially getting under hot water. Not that I'm saying I am. I mean, I think you'd have to have, you know, an actual impact. But I just rather play it safe. It is filament printing. It's not resin printing. I do know that these also have, this particular Mac and the ones that I have also have resin print files, but they're at 1/100th scale, not 1/60th. Not quite sure why. I imagine you could probably, if you know how to scale it up or whatever, or do whatever you had to do, you could probably do it bigger. As it stands, 1/60th scale is kind of silly. The saving grace is that this basically puts it in 28mm scale. So there is support for that in terms of extra like MacGuffins and stuff, for like if you're going to put on a base or do a display. You have things you can work with. Battletech is very open-ended in terms of the scenery. It doesn't have like super specifics, right? So you don't have to worry about it. It's not like 40K where, yeah, it's pretty open-ended, but also if you're in an Imperial world, like of the Imperium, you're expected to see certain motifs. You don't necessarily have that here. Outside of like key worlds of the Draconis Combine or the Capellans or stuff like that, where they have certain, you know, cultural representations based on what they're inspired by in terms of from real life for this fictional setting. But that's only for like key like cities and compounds. Anyway, you can kind of see more of those. I don't know how well this is working because the angle I'm sitting at's bad to see the video too well. You can kind of see what I'm talking about there with the print lines. What do you call those? Layers. There you go. You feel it you can feel it a little bit. It's nothing crazy. It's not like it's like a road being worked on and graded, but this is meant to kind of fill that in, sand it down a little bit. And the sanding isn't just to sand down the stuff we're using here, but also to sand down some of the ridges of the actual print itself. So it's not just about getting the Bondo worked in better. It's also about getting the bulges in the prints, the minute bulges in the prints squatted down a bit by filing down, and then the sanding just gets everything smooth. Evens each other out, I suppose. I'll do the smart thing and actually put it on the plate, which was the idea in the beginning, and then I just said, nah, because I don't want to get it on my test model there for an Astartes Force. It's like a palette cleanser. Whenever you get a little bit too much into, or things get a little bit too much, you can let this fully dry, work on a different project. I like working on projects when they don't have a real deadline to worry about for my personal stuff. I remember with 40K, I had several armies, and a couple of them I would work on, and then I would kind of ramp it up because there was like an event or a tournament I wanted to use them in. So I would really kind of burn the midnight oil and go crazy that way. And it worked. It didn't make me dislike it or anything, but I prefer not to. So this clearly has no use aside from display. So here we are, just taking time. I know I said legs, and I'm focusing on this arm here. But, it happens. I have no idea how well this is coming through at all with the microphone and whatever else, but let me know. Joke's on you, there is no money. Just mud and plastic. I would too. The problem is the microphone keeps sliding. I gotta figure it out better. It's like running away from me, which is typical. That's just on brand. Every time I try to move it, it decides to go on a journey. I don't know if that's any better. Because I can't hear myself. I mean, I can hear myself, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean. More mud. That makes two of us. That makes two of us. I wonder why that felt so smooth, because I put some mud in it already. That's why it feels smooth. This hand's actually pretty smooth. I don't think it'll need that much aside from this one little base color here. It's the rest of the arm. The rest of the arm is going to need it. Look at that. This is a not an Innersphere mech, so a little different. It's also gigantic because it's, well, not 6mm. You can kind of feel that. Surprisingly, the brush is not that bad in terms of holding up. It doesn't gunk it up like you might think. Also, I'm not leaving globs on it, but still. I wouldn't use your best brush, but it's not like you use it once and your brush is gotta be trashed. So I think that's a pretty good deal. Once we get something fully mudded up, I'll do some sanding. You can definitely make a fine grit of a mess, depending on how into it you get. So I would do it over like a plate or a paper towel. Or vacuum up afterwards or something. This really won't lock in the pose, so don't be too worried about the flex joints or whatever. But don't gunk it up either. Obviously, if you use straight Bondo spot putty, it's gonna gunk up stuff. Thin down like this, the acetone does really good at making it thin, but also, you know, letting it do its thing. Clearly not for car work, like it's supposed to be. You would just use it straight. I assume. I never did body work. But, you know, this works great on 3D printed props. This works great on anything that you know that the acetone won't eat through. My recommendation is, if you're unsure, make a little mix of this if you have this stuff, and put it on a test piece. Like if it comes on a sprue, use the sprue, see how the sprue handles it once it fully, lets it sit on there fully dry. Don't just go right onto something. It's not really something you need to do on miniatures that you buy, unless it has like a gouge or something, some type of defect. Here's the other leg connected to the waist. It's a lot of mud I'm gonna have to work on. I have seen similar processes done with airbrushing. Two things with that. A, acetone, not something you want to breathe in. Bondo spot putty, not something you want to breathe in. Put them together and aerosolize it, you definitely don't want to breathe it in. And when I say breathe it in, I mean like huffing this stuff, like putting it into the air. Something like this, you can definitely wear a mask. But if you were going to airbrush it, do it outside and doubly wear a mask. But I don't like the idea of putting something like this through an airbrush, because it dries chunky and chalky. But if you have like a super cheapo airbrush that you're not using for any paint purposes, just to do random products through it, it can definitely speed up the process. Although it'll be pretty fine, because as it get blasted out an airbrush, so you probably have to do multiple coats. Where like this, I can gloop it on a little bit thick, and then use acetone mixture and whatnot to thin it down while I'm spreading it. You don't really have that luxury with the airbrush, because it's got to go through the airbrush. Now this stuff is literally Bondo glazing and spot putty, so if you did have a big gouge in your part or your piece, you could literally use it like you were repairing a dent or something on a car, and just put it straight on and do that, and it'll dry and harden, and work just fine. I have an example of that, but it's tucked away, so maybe another time. But yeah, you could thin it down or not, depending upon what you need it for. So this is a modernized, I guess you could say. When I say modernized, basically, this is a MechWarrior Online / MechWarrior 5 base model. From what I can tell just by looking at it, the finished piece. The classic Timberwolf is called such because it's based on the classic art design which is different from what we see in MechWarrior Online / MechWarrior 5. Basically, everything in MechWarrior 5 utilizes the stuff from MechWarrior Online, but to a higher degree of model detail in most cases. So, basically, MechWarrior Online is what you would be looking at, like a tag for what this thing kind of is from. So I had a point to that, and I lost it, which is what happens. But like, what happens when you get old, I guess. I completely lost it. Yeah, I don't even remember where I was going with that, but it was going somewhere. Maybe I'll come back. But anyways, I guess part of that point is that this is not like the classic shape. So there's that to consider as well. If you're going to make a guess for what this is. It has no inner sphere designation. It's known by its correct name. So there's another hint. Oh yeah, I think where I was going with that is I do have, this is not a classic model. This is from Ironwood Metals, the 28mm pewter elemental. This is a classic style in terms of the visuals of it, which I like. I guess I should clarify myself a little bit. I like both the classic and modern styles of these things, right? It's not like I think one is necessarily superior to the other. There's something about the classic Timberwolf that I just wanted to have, even though it wouldn't fit in with this star that I'm doing, which is why it's not a part of it. And I painted it up as its own little thing. But in any case, I have that 28mm Ironwood Metals Elemental because Elementals are awesome. And I'm going to paint it up along the same lines as the star here because I feel like for now, especially in this having an X stuff, it fits in scale-wise. If things feel a bit funny or a bit silly as I go, I can just easily disregard it. But I wouldn't need to do this. I mean, I could do this on it, but I'd have no need to, right? So, likewise, if you're doing a 6mm mech, unless you 3D printed it yourself, which I know is out there too, I wouldn't worry about doing this step either. This is really a 3D print step / prop step if you're doing stuff like that, like maybe castings or scratch building a prop and you want to get things smoothed out. It's not really going to be needed for like your GW products or even your classic Battletech products. But the more you know. I would like to find some 28mm modern elementals because I do really like the way they look, but classic one's also really cool looking. Without getting the starter set, well, here's the question. 2 questions. A, are you looking for Inner Sphere or Clan? And B, are you looking to do like just one squad versus one squad? Like are you looking for just, you know? let that dry a moment. Well, I wouldn't get the Urban Mechs pack because I think that's for Urban Mechs, and Urbies have a rough life. Any of the mercenary specific packs are good. Any of like Striker or Direct Fire or anything like that. You would want a mix of weight classes, and they tend to have that. Certain mechs are going to be deemed better than others, but any of them are going to be good packs. I personally would avoid the straight up, like, there's the Inner Sphere Assault Lance, and that's all assault. Or close to it, not literally all, but I don't think that's a diverse enough of weight class, because lights are really good when supported, and assaults, if unsupported, can easily be left in the dust, you know? Yeah, I mean, you could throw down. The big thing is, like, either you balance out the sides by total tonnage. So, like, the Awesome and the Warhammer balances out against a Griffin, a Shadowhawk, and a Wolverine. But, like, you know, if you're rocking 400 tons, then they're going to have a lot on their side if they're not also all 100-ton assault mechs. And there's battle value, but just to throw down, anything that's a bit more of a mix, I think will work out fine. And if there's a particular faction with or sub-faction that is liked, like if you're all about House Davion, there's a Davion, like, heavy lance, I think, that you can get that's thematic for mechs they would typically field. But I don't know. Obviously, it depends on how people want to get their stuff, but I don't know for Inner Sphere stuff. But for example, the Clan Invasion box set, they have what's the word? They have online only, where you can get the miniatures from that box set just by themselves. I don't know if that's for every box set, but I know it's for the Clan one. And you've probably seen them, but they're not painted, but you don't have to assemble them either. Now, if you like the certain mech, Catalyst Game Labs also has, not for every mech, but certain ones, premium models that you do have to assemble. I don't know their exact size scaling. I haven't seen one in person. But they have extra MacGuffins going on. Of course, the big question then is how you want to paint them. Because you can literally do anything. You can even hit them with the Razzle Dazzle, because that's a camo pattern. It's called Razzle Dazzle. So much mud. I have to make more in a bit. And hopefully not get it on my hands this time. There it is. Depending on how much you throw down on the mud, you can see it gets darker. I don't know if you can see it. I can see it. It's not that important to focus on it, but the darker it is, the more of the actual bondo is on the piece. And everything that has like detailed panel line style stuff, I can still see them despite putting like a heavy layering down. And if they're not to my liking, once I've sanded down, I can go back in with a panel line scraper thingy. This one that has variable blades I can put on to kind of get that line back crisper. Which you wouldn't have to do on a normal model because you wouldn't be doing this, but this is for your layer lines. You probably wouldn't need to do this on resin either. I don't know how this plays on resin, but this plays pretty nicely with plastic. I know that much. But also resin I'm not certain how much you'd have to worry about this as much because I don't print in resin. And again, you don't even have to do this. I'm just being meticulous and weird. So welcome to that. Probably wouldn't worry about this as much on like a 6mm model if I printed one. Unless it was like really obvious after like a light gray base coat or whatever. Then again, I'm also not a supremely adept 3D printer either, so I'm sure there are people that can print things with a much higher caliber of quality. Like, you don't have to really worry about this. And it's not like this isn't a bad quality. This printed quite nicely, but I'm just saying. There's a whole other avenue of things to consider when you throw a 3D printer into the mix for doing models. Oh, out of frame again. Anyways, speaking of the box sets earlier, mechs, those are all plastic mechs, and I find it very interesting that they exist because I don't know who makes them. Right? Kato's Game Labs had a deal and has recently acquired Ironwind Metals, which produced the mechs, right, for Battletech for decades, more or less. And they're pewter, hence their name. They're Make Metal Miniatures. And I think they have some resin stuff, but I don't really know. And I don't think they make these plastic ones that are out there to buy. I haven't really done a big delving or searching into Ironwind Metal stuff recently, but I do remember like you could order, you used to be able to order from them down to like the variant. So if you wanted a, for the most part, I know like with OmniMech you could get an alternate configuration A, Nova, for example, from Ironwind Metals. And you could order it basically that way, because those arms were arms used elsewhere, so they just put those arms in the Nova box or whatever, which was pretty cool. I don't know if you can still do that. I also don't know if they updated their sculpts at all to be like if you want a Nova now or a Timberwolf now, would it look like it did back in the 90s? Because the Nova was especially different. Or would it be a modern updated one in pewter? I don't know. Because they're still the only way outside of, I guess, going on eBay or something to get individual mechs. But visually I do wonder what they look like, because I have Ironwind Metal stuff. Slash Ralph Partha stuff, depending on the age of it, but I don't know about the ones that you could order now, like what they look like or their size. Scaling is another thing that's kind of been a nuisance in the past for Battletech. I'll say pre-Alpha Strike. have them somewhere and I don't know, but I have a box of like smaller scale mechs for the smaller scale BattleTech game, smaller than 6mm, and I bought them by accident online, not realizing the scale, and I've never opened them, but I kept them because I thought it was neat. I just didn't need it. So I'm not really going to do this up much. I'm just going to give a little bit of grit to maybe help secure something. But that's where the torso would sit, right here on that top piece, that top nubbin. More mud. I was apprehensive of putting this leg on this piece. I did it more so just to make sure everything fit properly, so I knew how to put the other leg on. But now I feel like it's making certain aspects a little bit harder in terms of putting the mud on. And then, of course, that means also painting is going to be a bit harder, which is why I like to paint in sub-assemblies. Speaking of paint, not that I'm going to do it tonight. Definitely not ready for it, because I don't even have all of the stuff printed yet for this mech. I do that in stages. I learned from doing the classic Timberwolf. What I do with the classic Timberwolf was I decided there I was going to print everything and organize it, which I did in a bunch of baggies and whatnot. I printed everything before really doing any assembly, which presented its own problems. So now I think I have a better idea of how I want to print things. Basically, it's like in little minor assemblies, like smaller than sub-assemblies, that basically are meant to go together for the most part. And then that's how I'll print it. And then put it together, and then move on to the next print. And I did that for our most recent print part for this, and I just haven't really put them together to be ready to move on yet. I'll eventually get to that. But probably not this week coming up. I have family for most of the work week over. So not going to be any streams this work week. Still think I can get ready for Shadow Kerensky on time. If not, I should be able to just do like any other DLC. Just that right from the get-go to play it. But it'd be cool to play it with a save file. I have one save file, but I think it's too far forward. I'll have to see if I have a quick save or another manual save that's before the timeline portion you need to be at. But anyways, I'm just saying that because I'm probably not going to stream until next weekend, or this coming weekend. Well, it's Sunday now, so probably not going to be able to stream until like Saturday. Tend to do Space Marine 2 on Fridays, either just for fun on my own, or maybe I stream it on Twitch specifically, not here. I could if somebody wanted me to, but if I do any type of streaming, it tends to be that on Fridays, because, you know, for the Emperor Friday, just I like that, so that's why I do it. It's not the only time I play that game. But in any case, you know, gotta have more than one outlet out there for doing stuff. When I'm not doing nerd stuff, I'm tending to my lawn. Jabberings of an old man now, but it's not doing too hot this summer. That's my other focus outside of just working and whatever else. Hey, we got a lot of mud on this thing, just yammering away. See if we can't get this other leg fully mudded up for the first pass to do some more, to do some sanding. Used up a lot of mud. It's not mud, I just call it mud. That's how I refer to it, but I already went over what it was. You could almost want to say it's more like a clay, even though it's not. Like clay red. Definitely want to be careful with the acetone and the Bondo, though. If the smell is too strong to you, then that means a lot of it's getting into your nostrils and you might want to have a mask on. Or a fan going or something. I have plenty of ventilation going right now, so I'm good. And I don't think you'll be able to hear anything I'm saying with the mask, because you don't want to use like a COVID mask. You want to use like a proper mask. That you'd use for like painting and doing stuff, because you know we're dealing with chemicals and stuff here, especially if you're aerosolizing, like I said. But we're not. It's a good thing I'm not painting up in this color either, because this is a color that you could get paint in. Technically, I think Delta Galaxy of Smoke Jaguar is in a, I think it's Delta, I could be getting my Greek letters wrong, is in a color, main color similar to this, but we're not doing that, so we don't have to worry. If you are watching this, obviously later, because I can see statistics for now, and now is not, but if you are watching this at a later date, sound off in the comments. Let me know you made it this far. Help combat that algorithm a little bit with a like, maybe a subscribe, you know. I hate sounding, or saying that, because it sounds so YouTube-y and desperate. Mostly it just sounds way too YouTube-y. But that's what we're on, right? Can't say I'm not on it. So, I just noticed, because I've been on YouTube for a while with a different channel, and I have noticed over the years YouTube tweaking their algorithm formula stuff, and it's in a pretty vicious state right now. Combine that with just the state of people are in terms of going on stuff from mobile devices and doom scrolling and not really subscribing to channels or doing stuff. They're just scrolling through the stuff, whatever pops up, and maybe doing a quick search to scroll through. It's a different landscape than it was back in 2009 when I first started doing stuff on YouTube for fun, right? Never for profit, always for fun. But it's just, even that you can notice it. But yeah, if you are still here after watching this in the future, let me know if you do stuff like this yourself, if you mud stuff up like this, 3D print, do you 3D print big stuff, what do you do? I had one guy tell me in a stream that he 3D prints stuff for like Battletech, for like objectives and like vehicles and the like. Because yeah, there's more than just mechs, obviously. Although they're the stars, truly. But there are people who play out there with vehicles to really good effect against mechs. I think more so like to prove a point, or to be somewhat trolly, I don't know. Or thematic for something, right? To each their own. The other problem with this mud, which is why you probably shouldn't want to mix up too much of it, although, you know, it ain't one go. Or leave it out, like having it in a container like this helps, even though this container does have a big mouth opening. It's not as big as it could be, which is good. Is that acetone evaporates or dries or whatever you want to call it, evaporates pretty quickly, all things considered. Now this isn't just rapidly insta drying, but in the bottle, but it definitely you'll notice your concoction getting a little bit thicker, a little bit wonkier as time marches on. Luckily, it still feels okay, but that's why I have to go in and mix it every so often. It's more so the acetone than the spot putty. The spot putty will dry too, but when it's in the liquid state, it's not going to do anything except settle and get a little thick. And then when you have less liquid from the acetone, it's going to get thick anyway. So there's all that good stuff to consider. Trying to figure out where to hold this thing because I don't remember where I was working on it. But a little remix and you're back in the action. I try to limit the mud and stuff where I know things are supposed to go link up to something else, like on here. So I'll do certain sections, but I'm not going to go too far on because I know from the other leg where other pieces connect to it. And one thing I've noticed with 3D prints, I suppose in the files, but the tolerances can be rather tight for fitting together. So if I'm not wanting to try and mess with that too much, meaning I don't want to put this mud or even like primer or stuff where I don't need to, if I can help it. Sometimes you can't help it, especially if you go in airbrush status and you just are going in a flow and you're just hitting everything to make it all look the same color. And like, oh, probably shouldn't have done that. But, you know, more to consider. And if you somehow randomly clicked on this spot or you've been watching, feel free to give a guess at what this mech is. It's a Clan Omni mech. It's not a new one, meaning in terms of Il Clan era, it's been around a bit before then. It is an Omni mech, and it's a Clan one. And it doesn't have an Innersphere designation. It's known by its actual name by both Innersphere and, of course, the Clan. Or the clans, plural. So that's the legs, what they look like. This is the one of the arms. And this is the other arm, which I think should be helpful in kind of figuring it out, even though it's not being super crisp in the footage. If you're a Clan fan like I am, also let me know. And if you're not, what is your faction? Mercenaries, Lyran Commonwealth, Comstar. I'm always curious because one thing I will say with Biotech is that I don't really know which faction type or sub-faction or whatever is considered to be the most popular in the setting. I don't know. I know House Davion gets used like as a protagonist a lot in things. Even though they're not really protagonists themselves, nobody really is. But it doesn't make them the most popular, right? Of course, House Steiner, they're they have the popular meme of the Steiner Scout Lance of Atlases, right? But you know, memes does not equate most popular either. It's just funny. Things are looking pretty good compared to where they started with all the mud on it. I do like that. And again, to be clear, this isn't going to stay this color. This is just a smoothing out strategy of the print that is entirely optional, as it is time consuming. And this isn't even all the pieces for the mech. This is just all the ones I'm doing on stream, on camera right now, as to not give away the mech too much yet. But once I get the other pieces more where I want them to work on camera, then we'll do that. And I think it'll be the next hint for what's going on. Really though, it's not much left to print. What is even this? Oh. I know what that is. I figured it out. I gotta see if I can figure out an extension to maybe get the camera more localized, but I can't twist it, so it's better than what I was trying to do before, which I never made it to this stage of testing. So I'll take that. Okay, take it where you can get it, right? Little victories here and there, I suppose. Circling back to elementals, I was talking about that ages ago. I would love to find 28mm versions of what we see in Flashstorm, because that's based on, of course, the modern redesign of the elemental, just to kind of modernize it a bit. I like the classic design for sure. Don't get me wrong, but you know, the MWO design for the mechs, a modern design for the elementals would feel more appropriate. Really cool to see them in Flashstorm. I think they did fine. You know, my biggest worry is that they were going to be like this, either super mission critical to have to do certain things and have to wait and rely on as like a gimmick, or they were going to be hot garbage. And they definitely weren't hot garbage. They needed a patch or two, which was to be expected, considering their hitbox, their size is much smaller than a mech's. They're gonna get caught on things you're just not going to foresee. But I think they did fine. It's cool to see them go to work and do stuff. I still, and I've been thinking of this for a while, even before they were announced for Flashstorm, I still think it'd be cool to get a video game entirely based on being an elemental. I don't know what you do in the game. There's different ways to go about it, but I think it'd be a lot of fun to bound around apart like elementals do. Because that's kind of their whole shtick. And I like a good shtick. That sounded weird. The important thing to keep in mind, I guess, if they were to do a game like that, is that they're not Space Marines. So we're not looking to make a Space Marine clone, right? That wouldn't be ideal. It wouldn't work out well. They're elementals, and they do things a bit differently. So they would have to really focus on that, whoever did it. But given the state of how things are in the gaming industry these days, with projects going under and things getting shut down and layoffs left and right and different big names and troubles around, who knows what's going to happen? I surely don't. I'm just a fan with the wish list, right? I'm not going to worry too much on the bottom of the feet. They're going to be either glued to something or pegged so they can stand on something, or with either pegs and magnets or magnets. So I'm not too worried about giving them crazy detail. If anything, they'll get base coated just so they don't stand out in case for some reason you do see them. But I'm not worried about them being super silky smooth. Nice thing about this is that it cures, dries, whatever you want to call it, pretty quickly, so you can handle sections. As long as you don't glob it on crazily. Obviously, the thicker it is, the longer it's going to take to dry. But the acetone and evaporating or doing what it does, I think, aids in the curing, drying, whatever it is, of the Bondo. At least that's how it feels. It could be completely wrong, but that's the feel. So that's helpful. And if it's not doing that, it feels like it is. So it's giving me, mentally it's helpful even if it's not doing anything. It just feels like better progress. And sometimes that's all you need. So it is part of what I call a mega project, and that's because it's a full star at 1/60th scale or just 28mm scale, however you want to say it. Luckily enough, there's enough out there and stuff that I personally find interesting at this scale to make use of. So the entire star is going to have, individual mechs. It's not going to be a duplicate mech in the star. There's enough out there that I had to make some decisions on what I wanted to include in this star. So that's also pretty cool. And I say that because at this scale, you don't quite have the same, there isn't the same amount of, let's just say, support out there. And I'm not somebody who makes these files, so I'm not going to add any. So I'm at the mercy of what I can find from what people have done. And at this scale, it's not as much as what people have done at smaller scales. So being able to find what I found, I'm rather pleased with, and I'm kind of picky, so it's gotta pass my scrutiny and looking at the files, or at least looking at the images of what it would look like when done and everything, and so there's that. Like, I really like visually and the concept of the Evan Jaguar a lot, but I haven't been able to find one. Either by looking it up as Evan Jaguar, or even just looking it up as Cauldronborn, which is the Inner Spirit designation. And I haven't been able to find anything that I would want to use or in this scale. So, you're not able to really have quite the selection you might think. Especially on the Inner Sphere side. I'm not doing Inner Sphere, but I've definitely come across some. And there are some that are out there that are pretty cool. Others that you go, okay, I see what they're going for. But then you realize there's really not the same variety because there's a lot of Innisphere mechs out there. Like, I think you can find Centurion, but it'll be like MWO Centurion. I think you can find, I think the Battlemaster. I know the Shadowhawk, because it keeps popping up whenever I just do images searches for stuff. I want to say the Atlas because it's an Atlas, and I feel like it'd be sacrilege to not have that out there, but I don't know because again I haven't been looking for him. Stalker's out there. The mech, talking about the mech people. So that's kind of cool. I remember MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries. One of the missions you could get, one of the contracts you could get, was an interesting one because you didn't get to keep it, but they had you use specifically a stalker in that mission or in that contract. It was theirs; they supplied it, and you got to use it, which was just interesting because that doesn't typically happen in like games like that, or hasn't really. And it was somewhat early on. I forget the exact reasonings why, but they didn't want one of their pilots in it, or they needed to make it look like it was captured or something or other. But I think it was somewhat early on in the campaign, so you got to experience an assault mech kind of early on, which was pretty cool. That mech has grown on me. I didn't used to like it that much, but it's grown on me. I think the MWO modern redesign of it, like a really big, making it look like a really big modified catapult helps. But even still, right? It's just one of those things where sometimes designs, they grow on you or they fade depending upon anything. That was a random tangent, but hey, welcome. So I'm still waiting on MechWarrior 5 Clans mod support to have enhanced zoom. It's in MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries. I know it's there. It's been there. I don't have it in there because it just seemed unnecessarily complicated to get it to work on Steam. Maybe it's easier now, but I just make do with it. Plus, while it is nice to have in general, Innisphere ranges in Mercenaries are so short feeling anyway that I'm not as hurting for it as I am in Clans. But nobody's made one yet. I've searched both the Workshop and the Nexus mods and I haven't seen one. That's something else that I don't really have any knowledge on how to do, otherwise I'd try it. But I just don't feel like trying to learn just to do zoom. I've beaten the game multiple times without it. I would just love to be able to have that enhanced zoom and really bring to bear the power of the range of the clans with like ER large lasers and ER PPCs and Gauss and all that. I think it'd be fun to be able to be like the sniper. But to no avail. One thing I don't know, I haven't checked, I don't know if the ranges for the Innisphere enemies are the same as they are Mercenaries. Never actually put two and two together for that to see if they were. I feel like they're not, because if they were and we see the ranges we have even adjusted as they are now, for certain things is absurd. So I'm imagining Shadow Frenchie's gonna have the clan ranges not be as absurd in there, but if they are, that's gonna be nuts to both fight against and then use. So yeah. Oh wow, look at that. This mud procedure doesn't have to be perfect, right? It's not like paint. You don't have to get it in your mind that it has to be absolutely spotless perfect or you're doing it wrong. That's not the case at all. So don't fret if like it doesn't seem uniform perfectly. It's less about the coverage of color and more about the feel of the coverage for smoothness. So if things are feeling to your liking, of being pretty buttery smooth for you, doesn't matter what it looks like because you're gonna be painting over it with your primer anyway. And it's definitely something worth considering and reminding yourself. I'm saying it here because it's worth noting and also to remind myself. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind with this process if you do it. It's like painting, except you don't have to worry about it being really proper, perfect coverage because it's also only really meant to be a smoothness thing. As long as the detail is there and it feels smooth, and you do a little bit of sanding, light sanding with a sanding film, and you run your finger along it after the fact, and you like what you're feeling, then you are set to move on. So that's what's most important. I say as I still try to put more on places that I probably don't need to. Alright. So they are looking very muddy. The arms are left, and then maybe a little bit of sanding to round things off. We don't want to get it too gunked up. Not that this is very thin, even if it doesn't seem it. But I'm not worried about getting it too crazily in every little crevice. Part for what I said earlier about it just being for smoothness. And also part because if it's something that, visually you're not going to be able to tell too much, if it's kind of tightly packed in a crevice somewhere, then, no harm, no foul. Nothing to really get worked up about. And like I said again, even if you miss a little section here and there, as long as it feels smooth at the end of the day. This is not like something that you're meant to paint over and like a primer where you want to get a nice, good, even coverage. I mean, you're putting paint on this, but we're not doing this for paint adhesion, if that makes any sense. We're doing this for smoothness. It's a different beast. And that's why I really like mixing the acetone with it. Again, only acetone. Isopropyl alcohol won't work. Isopropyl alcohol almost basically dries up the Bondo. So it's like having little Bondo pebbles almost in an isopropyl alcohol bath. You don't want to do that because we need it to be in its mud-like state, so we can, as I say, mud it up. And that's precisely what's going on. A little mud here, a little mud there. Another big thing with stuff like this, either because you discovered it yourself or you're following a tutorial. I'm not calling this a tutorial. If you want to, that's up to you. But all I'm saying is whatever way you're going about something, even if you've done it before, remember to trust the process. Certain things might seem like you're ruining stuff, which could be because you are, right? It all depends if you're experimenting or not. But If you're following a process that's been tested and true and it works, you just gotta trust it, right? Kind of like when you do certain washes, especially over like a clear medium, like you've varnished the model with like a gloss varnish, and then you're doing the like an oil wash with mineral spirits or white spirit stuff. You gotta trust that process, even though it looks like you're ruining stuff. So, same thing with mudding here. It may seem like you're ruining stuff. You're not. The detail is there. Just be careful, of course. But you're gonna reach a point in this when you're like, geez, am I even doing anything? Or am I just making a mess? And you could definitely still be making a mess, but you're not just making a mess. And that's the important part. And it's not like this is super self-leveling itself down either. It's really thin and it's just drying / evaporating quick. That's how it works. That's what we're doing here. So you will need to potentially do multiple passes, right? Doing all this and then sanding it down, I may have to come back in and touch up certain parts, even though it looks like we got everything more or less quote unquote done, right? The idea is smoothness. And the more curved something's supposed to be, like a gentle curve, or more is meant to be like a glass piece or something like that, let's say, or a reflective piece, and it doesn't feel smooth, the more you want to go until it is smooth, just because you got to really make sure you get it there. Again, if you care that much. You can easily skip this whole process on a print like this and just go right to paint. And there's nothing wrong with that. How much this truly improves the end product as I knock things over is somewhat of a subjective thought, right? There's no like guarantee this is going to make a superior product for you. When I say product, I mean end result for your project. But even if it's nothing more than psychological, it feels like you've done work to prep it to make it smoother, and it's going to feel better for you too. Sometimes the quantifying capability is minuscule, but how it makes you feel for doing the process is what matters, right? It's kind of like if you paint stuff that you know nobody's ever going to see, but you know it, that is painted, so it makes you feel better. It's like what certain, like what a real craftsman will do or something, is like they'll fit the form, let's say they're doing flooring or they're doing something for carpentry or whatever, and nobody's going to see the joint or nobody's going to see it, but they do it to the same caliber as if you were. It makes them, A, feel better, like they did their job. It's their reputation or whatever. It could just make them ease their mind and feel better that they did the right thing, and that's what's most important. So, same process here. Random thoughts from the workbench. Alright, so we're getting the mud pretty much, at least for all these parts, a good solid first pass. I don't foresee having to do too many reapplies, honestly. Maybe certain areas, just given how the print is, but that can just be ignored probably after like a second pass, and just, accept it for what it is. But yeah, this is looking really, really good for what we're doing, which is mud. It's not much, but it's honest work. Right? That's what they say. And it definitely holds true for this process. No sense in doing in there because it's going to attach whenever we're going to see that. And I wanted to have a stronger attachment with with the tight tolerances that this print has been showcasing to have for me. So with a little extra where I think it'll need another pass anyway, let's do a second coating. just to preemptively combat that as best I can. And then finish up the other arm. We can see what sanding looks like real quick. It's not like I'm gonna make a ridiculous amount of red dust or anything, but doing it over something is better than not. I know truly wise words have never been spoken until just now, but you know, it is what it is. We're just looking to take the edge off. Quite literally, we're just looking to take any potential inconsistencies in how we apply this mud away. And in place, looking for smooth. That's the whole goal. And we're looking to even out the peaks and valleys between the mud and the filament itself. In some cases, the filament's going to stick out above or just be coated by the mud, but stick out. And we want to file that down while also getting it more in line with where the mud sits in the recesses. It's more like baking than a science, I suppose, right? Or it's a little more art than science. I forget what the saying is because I don't know sayings. But the point is, you would have to do it by feel, and there is no feel cam here, so I can't help you there with this piece. I can't show you the feel because it's not exactly how it works, but rest assured, you'll know it for yourself when you feel it if you are going to do something like this. So we'll let that flake. We'll cover this up. Carefully. Alright. So I gotta get more of this. This is the sanding film. I don't know which grit this is. This is a pretty fine grit though. It's okay, we don't need to be pristine. We're not doing like finish work where we're making something shine to a sheen or polish to a sheen or anything like that. We're not looking to take lots of stuff off either, so you don't want to use a really gritty sandpaper. You want like a sanding film like this. Sometimes a sanding stick, if you're looking to get like a fine sanding stick into certain areas. Shouldn't need to do that here, which is good because I don't have one. But basically, you just feel it. You get a feel. It feels a little gritty. Take the sanding film and just gently run across. That feels so much smoother. You can kind of see raised versus lower areas because when you're done sanding it, you kind of get that whiter look on it. Like there's non-sanded and then there's sanded. Pretty clear difference. I can kind of still feel stuff, but it might just be inconsequential, especially when some paint gets down on it. But I'll give it a little off-camera sanding where I can get much closer to it to visualize, and we'll be back. Oh yeah, that's feeling mighty fine. Might do one more pass with the mud on this at some point, might not. And then we sand here, and you can kind of see it just gets instantly brighter where you sand. And we're just doing it carefully. You want to do it at a high grit. I wish I knew the grit number on this one. It's a color code from a pack, and I don't have the pack anymore, so I don't know what it is. I just know you can feel it's a really fine film. And don't mind the fact that you might see some layers, right? You might see that because it might not be perfectly smooth, but when you feel it, it feels really good. This is where having like a sanding stick might be a good play too. So this is feeling really good. Now, how many times you do this is up to you. If you're trying to get it so that when you sand it's all one color and you don't see any striations at all, you could be here a while. I don't know if it's picking it up right. But you can see the goal isn't to keep it this color. In fact, it changing color like this is a nice indicator where you sanded versus where you didn't. So it's feeling pretty good on these sanding parts. And it's really on these curved pieces more so than really straight that you're gonna really want to feel how it feels when you're done sanding. Like, this is so much smoother than it was before. So, you know, job well done there for this process. The process works. You gotta trust the process. And I like this because I can see what parts I haven't sanded yet, what part the sanding is missed. I gotta go back in with something finer. So like up here, I can feel it a bit more to the point where I might come in with a little bit thicker glob, or I might not, right? But like, you can start to assess the situation based on the fact that we have to remember there's painting to be done, and I'm gonna use, if I could find it, I have it, Mr. Surfacer. I don't have Mr. Thinner. I have Tamiya Thinner, and I have 07 from Gaia Notes. I have 2 bottles of that because it was hard to get. And that's going to come in handy for the paints because I'm going to be using Gaia Notes paints. Oh, here it is, right in front of my face. So I'm going to be using some Mr. Surfacer 1000. Hello? There it is. Eventually, not right now. Give it a good mix. Put some thinner in there. And that is probably best applied with an airbrush. If I decide to do that, that won't be on stream or even on video. I do that in the garage. But you could also do it by paintbrush. And maybe some of these, maybe a smaller section I'll do by hand just to show that you can. One of the things that I always felt seemed prohibitive to me was everything I was looking up always was like airbrush doing it, right? And I totally get why. It's just a speedier process. I hesitate to say better process because it's, at the end of the day, it's paint going on to where you want to go. That feels really smooth down there. That's really good. And to kind of cut myself off and go on tangents within tangents, when I say it feels really smooth, what I'm getting at is not only do I not really feel like minute little layers, but the grit from it drying, like here, this darker brown has like, it feels like a grit to it. It feels like, you know, micro imperfections. Like, it's not perfectly layered smooth. Like, I'm trying to think, almost like dust. Like if dust was caked on something and you scrape it off, if that makes any sense. Or if like you made a cut on wood or a cut on plastic and then you sanded that smooth. Is that type of process that we're doing here. Insofar as we're trying to get the layer lines to be smoothed out from the process, but the process itself is going to give a little bit of grit on the part, so we want to get that off with the sanding too. That's why I say even if it feels smooth, like in terms of no layers, it's worth hitting it with a little bit of sand, a little bit of sanding film or sanding stick at a high grit, just to kind of knock off that little bit of grit that's up there, and it'll feel that much smoother when you're done. If that makes any sense at all, let me know in the comments. But this is a kind of a big unwieldy piece. It's not meant for something like this, but it's working, and I will definitely be looking up more because this is getting kind of raggedy. It's not affecting what I need it for. If anything, it makes it less abrasive, which is kind of working for my favor. It's already pretty fine as it is. Fine grit, so being even finer, quote unquote, or just less grit only helps my cause. But there's something to be said about a nice clean sheet too. So this is why I say we're not going to make a big mess, because it's very little. Most of it ends up on the film. This film is usually meant for wet sanding. I wouldn't worry about wet sanding this, what we're doing. We're not trying to get a lacquered finish. We're going to be using some lacquer paints on it in the future, but we're not worried about that polished, mirrored, candy finish. This is just mud. So we don't really need to worry about wet sanding. We can just use this high grit film and knock off that non-smooth finish for a smooth finish, if that makes any sense. And it's feeling pretty good. How far I go depends on how insane I want to get, but I'm really liking it. Truth be told, I've never used Mr. Servicer from Mr. Hobby. I've heard good things about it. We'll see how it is in terms of applying it, and then if any other touch-up work has to be done, post that. But the reason I bring that up is it could wind up, because this feels pretty smooth too, so it could wind up taking out, not like taking out the slack, but with the actual paint down, because even if you thin the paint properly and use it, you're still putting a layer of something down. That layer of something is going to live on stuff and take up space, right? So this could probably stand to get another layer of words, the mud, but feels a lot better than it did, and it may not need it on the entirety of the arm. Like this feels much better than it does up here, so it's just going to be dependent on certain sections getting a bit more mud. The most important thing is, and chances are when I do another Workbench stream, it'll be mudding predominantly too, because I got more parts to do and then reassess. The important part is whenever you do extra pieces or extra layers of the mud, that you also sand it down a little bit, or else it's just not going to, it's going to have a potential bit of a grit in its finish when it's done. So sanding is always important, and you can definitely tell where you sanded versus where you didn't. You can see it there without getting super fancy. You don't need to be too aggressive with it. We just want to be simple, smooth, slight, soft. Just getting it, knocking off that top layer to expose smoothness underneath, which is really working out. Now, of course, depending on what you're doing, you may not want smoothness. You might want to skip this step. This mech is not meant to have battle damage on it per se or anything like that, so I'm looking to have it be smooth and ready and all that. So now this is a little indentation down, if I can get on camera. You can see a little indent. I haven't sanded in there yet because I can't get in there quite right. So having some sanding sticks of this equivalent grit would probably do wonders. So I'm going to have to manage as best I can for now. But it's working pretty good. I'm being a little bit more forceful on the sanding here because I feel like I got something on here I didn't want. There it is, yeah. A little bit of extra Bondo chunk that I don't want there. Luckily you can just flake it right off. It's not going to affect or impact anything. And now we're feeling pretty smooth. So that's always good. Worst case scenario, you just come in with your little scraper there. Redefine that line. and you scrape out the pieces you don't need. And we're back to being a smooth line. Need to get it up close so I'm off camera. Yep, and we preserve that line. So that's good. You could also use like a flat scraper a little bit in place of the fine grit or high grit sanding on certain parts, and that might help also, but be careful because you could take off way more than you want that way and kind of make some issues for yourself. But can also smooth things down and feel pretty good. So it's really up to you. I think ow. All right. It's a tedious process, as you can see, but the results are, I'm not going to say speaking for themselves, because they lack the ability to speak, but the results are pretty evident and worthwhile in person, right? This is not something you're going to be able to feel on camera or anything like that, but when you go through it and actually go through the process, especially when you feel the before and after, it feels a whole lot better. And that's the whole point. What you don't see behind the scenes of like master model makers or like crazy paint competitions and stuff is all the prep work before the paint even goes down on it. I mean, unless they're showing you deliberately, right? But like if you're just looking at like the end result on like a storefront page or on a Instagram somewhere or some other website, you don't necessarily see all the prep work before the paint goes down. And then of course there's loads of work on the paint side for some of that truly top tier stuff out there. So this is, I'm not saying this is peak pinnacle of what I'm doing, but this is along the lines of what's getting done, like behind the scenes, stuff like this. Maybe not this exact process, but stuff like this. Same thing for making some really awesome props for cosplay and whatnot. Things that just look so good and so smooth and whatever else. This is what's going on, right? Not this literal process, but a process akin to this is going on, and it's taking its time and it's getting it right. It's not rushing it, but also not dilly-dallying if you have a deadline for, let's say, a convention or something. So it could also mean putting in extra hours on it, doing it for a while, having it dominate your free time that you might have, which can be precious and limited, instead of doing, let's say, I don't know, 2 different things during your free time and divvying it up. You might just decide that it gets priority until you get to a good stopping point for that, or you finish it. But when it's something like this and there are no deadlines, that's when it's ultimate kind of freedom to just work on it. And yeah, crazy philosophy, I suppose. So I can feel that I'm going to need more mud on this right here. On this side, I do not. So, them's the breaks. It happens. It's not the end of the world. That's why you do this whole process, so you can make sure you get it quote-unquote right before it's time to put paint down. So there you go. I'm going to hit the mud on this leg on some stuff real quick, and then I'm gonna call it. Because why not? But I had fun sorting some stuff out, some audio stuff out. Planning to do more of these. Less testing, more just, you know, clickbaity titles, I suppose. But yeah, the idea is just to chill, chat, create. You know, stuff like that. Good times had by all, hopefully. Share discussion, learn, ask questions, get confused. You know, the usual. The usual to being a nerd on stuff. So, I thank you for clicking on this video. If you did, and if you made it this far, especially if you watched throughout, then you're a real one, as they say on the streets, right? I don't know if they say that anymore, but I appreciate you. That ever-present YouTube algorithm shenanigans stuff I will bring up right now. I know it sucks hearing, it sucks saying it. Everybody says it, and it feels so gimmicky, to be honest with you. But all the cool kids say you have to say it, and if you don't say it, they say you're doing it wrong. So we'll see on that end. But it's free to do, to subscribe here on YouTube. And you do that, hit the like, do the notification stuff, and it helps combat this kind of unforgiving algorithm. I'm not looking to make some empire here. I just think Battletech's really cool, and I think it'll be fun to kind of get stuff out there into the cosmos for Battletech stuff, and you know, meet more of the community, if you will, that's out there. Strengthen it. Maybe we can get Battletech to blow up like it did in the 90s. I'm not saying it's unpopular. It's definitely popular, but who knows, right? One simple step, one little boulder, one little pebble can lead to a massive boulder, right? An avalanche and what have you. So, just some food for thought. But there, just like that, I've applied mud where I want it for now. That little spiel. It's pretty quick work. The mud's already dry in the areas, and it already doesn't look like I sanded it at all. And it's going to feel smoother than it did before. And then I'll put the sanding on there, and then it'll probably feel less smooth, but better, right, overall. And then you do it again, and that's kind of the whole process. It can go on as long as you want it to, as long as you're not trying to, gum up your detail. Right? So you're gonna have a certain point where you probably want to stop. But barring that, there's no like two thin coats rule or anything like that going on here. It's until you feel satisfied with the end result. That is your how many times you should do it. We'll put it on this arm. The LED light is also helping it dry quick on the actual piece, which is helpful. It's a pretty bright light, and it sits kind of high. So, in getting this stuff in frame, I didn't need to put it here, but I did. Blinds me a little bit. But that's the fun part, right? That's how we have the funds. So just like that, everything I sanded doesn't look like it was ever sanded again. It's a little bit more filled in again. It's a little bit smoother with the grit, and then once you sand it, that grit goes away and it feels smoother, but maybe not as smooth as it did with the grit because we just removed stuff, right? You get the idea, I hope. My descriptor is awful, but them's the breaks. So yeah. That'll be a good bit of progress to be had for sure. And then more will be had in the future, and eventually on stream again, and potentially do that, take a break, paint up my Space Marine a little bit, because why not? A little bit of a palette cleanser, let that dry, work more in this, you know, bounce back and forth. Even if you're all in one genre, or not one genre, one setting, I think it's, when plausible, I think it's fun to have like mini projects to work on at the same time, so you can bounce back and forth and not just get utterly, what's the word I'm looking for? Not just get utterly burnt out on what you're doing. Especially, you know, one of the reasons why I'm not really worried about working on all the mud right now, because I'll come back to do it again. But we'll just quickly douse it onto this arm too, and we'll call it. So I don't know when I'm going to work this into to the schedule, as they say. I don't really have a set schedule. I'm going to stop that now. I'm sorry. I don't have a set schedule for doing stream stuff. It's more so when the feel takes me. But on top of doing, you know, the prep for Shadow Kerensky and New Game Plus with Smoke Jaguar and having fun in MechWarrior 5 Clans, and even eventually getting back to Battletech 2018 to finish my first time playing through it, because I haven't finished that yet. I can do this. It's not something I'm going to do solely on camera, because it is a project, but for myself. But I can definitely do this, so I dig it. Anyways, that's that. I'm gonna do what I always do with that brush, by the way. Is I kind of wipe off the excess and then I let it dry. It's not, you wouldn't do that with paint, but once it's fully dry, it can basically flake off the brush a lot easier, and then I can reuse it again. No big deal. So good bit of mud progress. Really pleased with that. And that's all I got. So whenever you watch this, share your thoughts, your opinions, your questions, comments, what have you. I'll try and maybe do a quick video before doing the next Workbench update, because these are fun for me, and hopefully getting a discussion going can be even more fun. So yeah, thanks so much. Normal videos to come as well, so stay tuned for all that. And until next time, take care.